Neuroscience maps the brain's physical mechanisms down to individual synaptic firing patterns, detailing exactly how electrical impulses travel across the cortex. Yet, this mapping cannot explain why those specific chemical reactions are accompanied by the subjective experience of feeling alive. To bridge this explanatory gap, many physicalists rely on a conceptual mechanism known as radical emergence. This flowchart illustrates the physicalist model. Inputting non-conscious matter, neurons, atoms, to output subjective experience yields a persistent conceptual error. Philosophers like Strawson and Nagel argue emergence cannot be brute. You cannot derive phenomenality from structural concepts like mass and motion. Identifying new neurotransmitters or mapping more circuits will not solve this. The structural language of physical science has no vocabulary for the quality of existence itself. Asserting that human awareness simply springs into existence from dead, unfeeling matter is logically indistinguishable from invoking a brute miracle. In the 20th century, philosophers like Alfred North Whitehead began formalizing a rigorous secular alternative to physicalism. This framework is known today as constitutive micropsychism. It posits that subjective experience is not a rare accident of complex biology, but a ubiquitous property of reality, existing at the deepest microscopic levels of the universe. In this model, raw mental phenomenality is treated as an elementary feature of the natural world, alongside mass, spin, or electrical charge. The most basic particles are understood to be microsubjects. They do not possess human cognition, complex reasoning, or thought, only an unimaginably basic, infinitesimal flicker of raw feeling. If consciousness cannot be constructed from entirely non-conscious parts, then the building blocks of the universe must have possessed a spark of awareness from the very beginning. Philosopher Jonathan Schaeffer proposes an alternative ontological architecture called priority monism. Instead of building reality from the largest piece down, he argues reality is grounded from the largest piece down. Applied to the problem of consciousness, this yields the thesis of cosmopsychism. This visualization shows two competing models. Left, micropsychism aggregates small dots to build a shape. Right, cosmopsychism partitions a massive shape into smaller dots. Under the top-down model, the only foundational entity is the universe as a singular, undivided whole. The entire cosmos is treated as the primary conscious subject. Human and animal minds are not assembled from microscopic building blocks. They are localized, fragmented partitions of that universal subject. The universe does not contain a collection of distinct subjects. It is one subject, fracturing itself into distinct, localized human experiences. Returning to the bottom-up approach of micropsychism, theorists encounter a logical barrier known as the combination problem. In 1890, the psychologist William James outlined a critique of what he called the mind dust theory. He argued that if you take 100 distinct feelings and pack them as closely together as possible, you do not generate a unified macro mind. You simply have 100 isolated, windowless feelings. Modern philosophers refer to this as the problem of subject summing. This schematic illustrates the flaw in the bottom-up model. Trillions of discrete microscopic points of view can be grouped together in a human brain, but there is no logical mechanism causing them to dissolve their individual boundaries and merge into a single larger circle. If these micro-subjects maintain their distinct boundaries, they cannot form the unified, singular perspective you experience when you look at the world. This leads to the threat of the micro-experiential zombie, an organism that behaves exactly like a human, composed entirely of conscious particles, but possessing no central I to experience the organism as a whole. Without a mechanism for distinct subjects to coherently sum together, the bottom-up panpsychist model remains mathematically and logically incomplete. To resolve this tension, we have to evaluate the exact type of information physical science actually provides. In 1927, Bertrand Russell identified a limit in what scientific observation can actually detect at the foundation of our physical models. Physics is written in the language of mathematics. This language maps the extrinsic, relational behaviors of matter, but it remains silent on what that matter actually is in and of itself. This schematic of gauges reflects Arthur Eddington's assertion: our physical knowledge consists strictly of readings of pointers. we detect how objects exert force on other objects, measuring only their relations. This creates an intrinsic void in our understanding of nature, a void addressed by a framework called Russellian monism. Physics dictates that an electron is disposed to attract positrons and repel other electrons. Equations describe this structural shell, what matter does. But the categorical nature of the electron, the intrinsic reality that actually possesses those dispositions, is invisible to our instruments. We have built a mathematical description of the universe's outward behavior while leaving the substance that performs that behavior entirely undefined. So, what occupies the intrinsic nature of matter that physics cannot describe? The Russellian panpsychist proposes that the intrinsic categorical nature of the physical world is consciousness itself. This establishes the identity thesis. The physical state of the brain and the conscious state of the mind are not two interacting things. They are the exact same substance, viewed from the exterior as neurochemistry and from the interior as experience. Many react to this proposal with what philosophers call the incredulous stare, the intuitive rejection that electrons could possess any form of feeling. However, human intuition is an unreliable judge of reality. We accept that particles can exist in a superposition of distinct locations, a fact that contradicts our daily experience. Theoretical models are validated by their parsimony and their explanatory power, rather than their familiarity. Panpsychism provides a framework for a unified conception of nature. By treating internal experience as the intrinsic basis for the structural equations of physics, it proposes a direct connection between the architecture of matter and the reality of being.